Hey everybody, welcome back to another feedback video. Today we have a new one from Tam and a few iterations to get through, so let's take a look. This is Tam's second version of this same layout. Her first one was this one, which is really successful. I really like how this one turned out. I think this is maybe an old version, but she's doing a nighttime scene now, which I think is awesome. Tam, you talked about how you had two versions of this, one with a gobo coming across here onto the foreground and one without. I think your instincts were correct, in my opinion at least. I think it doesn't add too much, and it actually, I think, complicates the value structure slightly by adding it. So I like it off. I like how contrasty and clear the silhouette of Spider-Man is here. So yeah, great instincts, great call on that one. This is super successful already. I really like how this is looking. Everything back here I think is really good. I don't know if I have many notes on things back here. I think the same kind of stuff applies last time we talked with the sunset piece, and I think you've hit everything really well back here. I did have a couple things on the foreground here, but just caveat, overall I think this is working really well so far, so amazing job with this. So the thing that caught my eye here is this light source here that you're using to rim Spider-Man. I think having the outside of this building get bright from this internal light, it feels a little bit like kind of glowy. I feel like, in reality, if you're lighting from this window, you're not gonna get light on the outside plane of this building. So I would say, taking this down to be the same value as these arches around it makes more sense, and will actually, I think, help the value read, the value structure of everything. I also darkened this this arch a bit. I think maybe it was getting a little too hot. It almost feels like, wow, like they're like, there's like a nuke going off inside of this room instead of what would normally be a light, a normal household light. It just felt a little bright in terms of the amount of energy it was giving off. So I went ahead and darkened that. You could probably darken this this AC unit as well. I think it's maybe getting a little too bright. Anyway, yeah, maybe take that down. I think, the window itself, it feels like it's working. To me, it's just like everything outside felt a little bit hot. I really like how these are falling off over here. So in comparison, we have a direct comparison to another window. It just feels like very bright. The other thing I noticed was this area that you have kind of being affected by this window light on his chest. I think it's not quite working, mainly because before we did that change on the outside of the building, you lose his silhouette. It sort of looks like he's transparent here because these two values are really blending together on him and behind him. So I would watch out for that. I would think, maybe try to get a tighter rim on him. I was thinking something like, let's see, you could even go, kind of hit this, hit his arm here maybe. I like the shaping you have here. Maybe Maybe he can have even like a little bit of a hotter rim on the edge of his face, and then take down this middle area here. So like, you know, you get the local color of his suit back here, and then, you know, you have this kick from this light, but yeah, when you zoom out, you can kind of see, you know, you get this nice rim here. Maybe it's a little too much, but you know, I think use your judgment and see if that's working for you to kind of get a little more influence on him from the window. I'm taking it down just a little bit. It's probably too bright. You definitely don't want it to be, you know, as bright as the source here, but you know, when you zoom out, I think you get the idea. It might help a little bit to kind of blend him into the environment. So there's that. I think, you know, if you didn't want to do the rim and you wanted to maintain the silhouette, I think that's totally fine as well. But I would sort of try to get rid of this shape on his chest. I think it's a little confusing what we're looking at there at first glance. And the other thing, I think, this is minor, but his eye reflection here, I really like what you did with the lamp. I think that's one of the street lamps being reflected. I think that's really successful. I think we probably don't need this bright spot here. It might be taking away from, you know, how nice the shape of the eye is. And then you might be able to just tune this down just a little bit, like this. And then, you know, from far away you can really read his eye shape, and it's not interrupted by the speck. I think that might help as well. And the last couple things, this blue light up here, you know, I'm not sure what it's motivated from. Maybe there is something off screen, like another neon sign or something that's giving this, but it is the only kind of, you know, hit of this sort of blue that I'm feeling in the entire image. I think maybe it's, you know, I like what it's doing, and I think you did this to separate his head from this railing, which is the right idea. I think maybe just desaturating it a little bit so it feels like skylight might help it not, you know, vibrate and stick out so much here. Yeah, I think probably taking it down in both value and saturation would probably help you with that, just to marry it into the rest of the image. But yeah, it's the right idea, I think, to sort of separate it. You know, another thing you could do actually is maybe leave that dark, leave the railing dark, and then maybe you hit his head with some of that rim from the window, or maybe you can justify it with this window up here, you know, like, let's see, maybe something like this. Obviously I'm doing a pretty crude job right now, but just painting it in, you might be able to get away with something like that, and that will help you sort of separate out this the top of his head from there. Probably too bright, but I think you get the idea. Oops. Yeah, you just need a little bit, I think, and I think this window is perfectly placed to kind of motivate that. Maybe not this quite as tight as this, but, you know, spilling a little bit more might do the trick. Something like that. Anyway, I trust your judgment. I think you have good instincts, so, you know, any of these notes, if you execute them and you feel like they're not working, feel free to not utilize them. Just some suggestions here. yeah, it's looking. Anyway, yeah, I hope that helps. I think this is really like almost there already. So I would say, you know, keep going. Maybe make small tweaks just for readability. But the image is working as a whole, so great job with that. One thing I'm noticing right now, actually, this might be too hot over here, just a little distracting. So maybe take that down. Let's see. Yeah, I think that works. Yeah, hopefully this helps. There's not too much more to do on this. I think it's already 99% there, just balancing a few things. Great job. Let's take a look at this piece, Theodora's piece. This is an iteration of this one that we saw a couple days ago. So you talked about really leaning into this overexposed look, coming from the outside, reflected daylight through these huge windows. I think this is working much better. I really like the feel of this that we're getting now, and I think it certainly feels much more like what you said you were going for, kind of bloomy and romantic here. Especially this area feels really good to me, the bloom here. So, a couple things with this. I know this was an eye exercise, and you talked about, getting rid of that circular speck and keeping the eye reflection. I think that's working pretty well. I think, trying to keep it maybe a little less of this like sharp line across the entire eye. I know this is probably what's happening in the actual reflection, but you might want to try to simplify this a little bit. Maybe try to kind of break up this line so it doesn't feel quite so like her eye is being cut in half right there. Might help. I think the other thing here, their irises are looking a bit too bright and a bit too saturated, especially his. Has sort of like a White Walker-y feel at the moment. So I went ahead and dimmed them down a bit and desaturated them just slightly. And I think they sit a little bit better now. Less, it almost looks here like they're giving off light. Whereas you kind of want them to feel like they're part of the character. I think the main thing here, let me say a couple things. I think the areas that should be occluded, like inside of the mouth and maybe even these nostrils here, might be able to go a little bit darker. They're almost feeling a little too translucent at the moment, a little bit gummy, and I think, especially here, you sort of feel like this should be darker inside of the mouth. I think that might help with readability. I think, great job taking away this table. I think that helps a lot with the staging. It feels clean. I wonder if, there's a big patch of window here. Maybe another chair or some set dressing here might help sort of like fill this negative space. Maybe not necessary, but it might be nice to, have a foreground element that's kind of breaking up this almost, purely white square. I think the biggest thing you could do right now is look at your skin shader. I think right now, the thing that's keeping this from feeling, I don't want to say realistic, but feeling true to materials is how matte their skin is. I think, being able to get some speck, especially some nice reflected light from these huge windows, some hot speck across their face here, maybe, I think it's feeling very gummy and more like clay or plastic right now. And I think giving them some oil, might help that feeling go away. Especially here, I think she looks very glowy and matte. So, whatever you can do to the material to kind of make it behave a little bit more like skin would help. I think the first step is getting more spec on them, um, and I think that would lend a lot to this. Um, but yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's working. It's working really well. I think this is the right idea, and keep going. It's great. Let's look at your other piece here. This is an iteration of this one. So you said that you replaced what used to be a directional light with a spotlight here. I think her skin is feeling much better. I think it's feeling a lot more natural now. I think the only thing that I'm thinking, oh yeah, you talked about making the bokeh smoother back here, which I think is working a lot. So it's working really well. I think now what we're missing is a little bit of contrast. I think the value range, you can see actually in this levels chart, it's quite dark. I think brightening it up overall and increasing the value of the image and the sunlight overall, I think would really help this magical feeling that you're looking for. With that, I think just doing this in Photoshop, I think this is probably getting too hot now. These flowers, but I think landing somewhere in this range will help it feel more like diffuse sunlight coming in, and that might just be what it needs here. I think it could be cool. Well, there's not much space. I was gonna say maybe getting some of this flower in her eye to really connect her with this prop might help, but there's not too much space, and I think you don't want to overcomplicate it too much. I think you could probably just do like a little circle speck here. I think the one you have is maybe a little small at the moment. This might help a little bit to connect the character. But yeah, I think this is going really well. I think it's just mainly that energy levels of your key coming up. I think that will help a lot to kind of tie everything together. Cool. This is from Mohammad. This is a new one based on some feedback I gave on this one a few days ago. So you went in and you said you used this as some reference, which is great. I think this is a lot more successful. I think the levels of the energy levels feel much better. I think if you think about a camera and the way it exposes, you could just come up in exposure overall on this shot. I've done it here. I think raising everything up kind of helps to make it feel like, yeah, they're still in this kind of dim romantic environment, but you've just exposed your camera a little bit brighter. So I love this idea you've done back here with this lamp. You could even utilize it, I think, to get more of a rim on them. Don't go crazy with it. I think a soft rim might be nice on their back here, and maybe to kick the hair a little bit. I do think with this key light, the color temperature of it is not quite matching what's on their face. I think this feels a lot warmer than what this light seems to be giving off. So I would probably maybe warm up this cat light a little bit. And I know this is most likely a cheat with a separate light over here that's looking like it's coming from this light. that's the right idea. I think maybe moving it over slightly and might help kind of wrap it a little bit more. And it does look like, it cuts off here, right? Like it starts to fade off at her shoulder, and it might help it be a little bit more believable if this light actually, affected more of the environment and more down here. I don't think you would lose too much of the read of her face if you just, not quite as bright as up here, but just sort of let it hit other places on the table as well. That might sort of help tie everything together. I think, this is a detail thing, but once you get there, try to simplify what's going on in the eyes. I think her eye material is working pretty well. It feels nice and glossy and shiny like a real eye. So that's working well. Yeah, I think it's a lot about, just balancing your key now, right? So not only with the color temperature, but I think you should probably wrap the key a little bit more. We talked about this on a separate piece that you did, I think last week or a few weeks ago. Being able to not only use one light, but use another light that's slightly more frontal on her, and you can, wrap the light so it's not quite so harsh just at one angle. Being able to wrap it around, I think would help a lot with the feeling you're going for. So yeah, I think exposing up overall, kind of tuning that key, the color temperature, and then wrapping the key around her face a little bit more. It's going to help a lot with all this. I would also be careful of hot spots on him. You said that we want to be looking at her, so you can kind of play him down a little bit, maybe even darker than this, so we're really like he's just a silhouette. Well, not that dark, but he's kind of value-wise, he's darker than her, and we're really clued into her face here. I think that would help. So, great job. And we have this last one from Michal. So the note last time was to, I thought this was the right idea, but I thought she felt a little flashed. And I think there was a cool light, a blue light coming from camera, close to camera, that was filling her in a little bit too much. So Michal moved the light to the top, which I think is working really well. I think, this is, she feels like she's in the environment, and I think like the cool light hitting the top planes of her, I think is working really well. And I see you did stuff to the eyes, which I think is a lot better. I think, the only other thing I'll say about this is, the character might be looking a little too warm overall for the environment. Like you have these quite saturated warm rims, and going into the shadow side of her, like it feels like it's not a lot. It's like 2% too warm. I bet you could barely even see it on the video, but I am cooling her down slightly here, and I think that might help her sit just a little bit better in this environment. Not this one. Sorry, this is too much. It's this. So I'm turning it on and off here. Hopefully you can tell. But yeah, it's just a tiny bit. I think just taking out a little bit of red overall in the character would help her sit in a lot. But other than that, I don't have many more notes on this. Great job. I think great job turning around those iterations, and I think it's improved a lot. So awesome work. I think that's it for today. Let's see, was there anything I missed? terms of notes. Oh, sorry, Theodora. There was one thing I wanted to say. I think his eye line here could be improved. Just shifting the eyes a little bit more towards her. Not a lighting note, I know. Sorry. But just making it feel like he's looking at her rather than kind of like staring off into space a little bit. And, you know, probably hers could shift a little bit as well. I think we want her to be looking slightly more screen right. You can almost feel that she's looking into camera here. So I think just shifting their eye lines a little bit. This one's working. The bottom one's working. So anyway, that's it. Thank you all so much. Great work, everybody. Thanks.